everybody, welcome back to episode 39 of the Grappling Growth podcast with me, Joe Testori. On today's episode, I was joined by Martin Worcester, who is the director of Canonbury Antiques. On this podcast, we speak about Martin's journey from essentially being a pioneer digital nomad coming from London, moving to Barcelona where he met his wife, moving all the way out to Huntington Beach, California, the surf capital of California. We speak about what growth looks like to him from a fiscal sense in business, how he has essentially circumnavigated scaling from a brick-and-mortar business all the way over to a thriving multiple seven-figure online e-commerce business. Martin is just a really nice, cool guy. And I think anyone who is in the entrepreneurial space and wants to get a real take on how to grow a business digitally should listen to this podcast. As always, thank you very much for tuning into the podcast. And if you like the episode, please show some love. See ya. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Martin, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Great to meet you, Joe.
So, Martin, my question to you is, what does growth look like to you?
Growth, well, obviously growth is, as the title suggests, expanding what you do. For what we do, growth is fiscal. So, you want to sort of improve year on year, your revenue. So that's the main idea of growth. I think especially in the world is very competitive and expensive, and to stay in business, you have to grow all the time, every year. So it's basically just increasing your revenue year on year for me, growth on a fiscal basis, financially. Yeah, obviously there's other areas of growth, personal growth, your development as a human and stuff, but on a business level, for me, just to be sort of on a purely capitalist level, it's fiscal growth, generating more revenue.
And we touched upon it very briefly before we came on air. Could you give the listeners a quick, say, 30-second elevator summary of your business journey over the last 20, 30 years?
Okay, that's quite a tough call in an elevator one, but my journey is basically, I was trained as a journalist, and I was a journalist, but that was in the sort of infancy of the internet. And at the same time, I had a family business I was involved in that at the time was bricks and mortar, just selling from a store. This is like early noughties, very early days of the internet. And I basically took the business and the brand online and changed how it works in terms of, we used to sell obviously from a bricks and mortar store. Now all our customers are all over the world, in every corner of the globe, and we sell from our website and from selling platforms with a brand that I created and with an audience. So that's in a very brief summary of quite a long time. And obviously we're going to dig into more stuff as we go through, but that's the nutshell of what I did and what I do now. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned what growth looks like to you in a physical capacity and how it is with your business, growing into a multi-million pound business globally. When you were in that brick and mortar business, would you say you followed the same philosophy with regards to growth, or do you think you had a bit of a different perspective, just kind of doing it, as you mentioned, you were at a far smaller scale, building it up?
Yeah, I mean, when I came into it, we had a physical store, and I wasn't really involved in the business in that capacity. So all I ever did was take it online. So I've only ever known the online version of the business, really. So, yeah, I mean, it was just, that's the natural evolution of the industry at that time was people were moving online. People want to buy online. So less and less you rely on people coming into physical stores. It's still a model. It's still a business. But I mean, I think I mentioned it before. We had our first showroom in Notting Hill Gate on Westbourne Grove, which is quite a famous, well-known street if you're in London. Or, I mean, obviously a lot of maybe American listeners will know Notting Hill Gate from the film, or other people will know it from the film. But the point I'm making was, when I started in the early noughties, the whole street was all antique shops. And then now, 25 years later, it's there's hardly any there, because the whole process, they either went out of business or they moved online and didn't need to have a bricks and mortar shop on a high, it's a very expensive area. So you could rent out your store and get more money than being an antique dealer and move online. So we moved the business north to Hertfordshire, which is where my family's originally from. So rent's cheaper. We have a warehouse. So it's kind of like an Amazon, if I can use that word, an Amazon fulfillment center. You have a big warehouse where you're handling lots of goods that are going around the world. You're shipping them to every corner of the globe. So that's how the business morphed, and it's a journey. It's a long. I'm giving you a nutshell, potted history of what happened, and there's lots of corners and things we can go into. But that was the journey, bricks and mortar to online.
And for you, so what year was this?
Which what actually starting selling online, or
Yeah, when you pivoted
I want
online.
to say, well, it was 2002. Circa 2002, because I mean, at the time we didn't have a website. Most businesses then wouldn't have had a website, if you can imagine that. It's kind of. So we first started to sell on eBay. eBay was really the only selling platform at the time, and eBay was, and it's still a big muscle in the world of e-commerce. But obviously, there's a lot more competitors now. But back then, it was just eBay, and it was interesting. It was a lot. I find things now are quite complicated, and everything. So much more technology, and it's more crowded and very competitive. But back then, I'll give you an example. You'd list one thing on eBay, and you'd be the only person selling that thing on eBay, and then 10 people would bid for it, and it would go for 2 or 3 times the asking price. Now, that one thing that you had on eBay, there's 500 people have the same thing on eBay. It's a much more crowded market space, which it does give some, makes some complications, but you have to evolve and stay ahead. But yeah, that's how it was eBay to start with.
So eBay was the first foil in the growth strategy. After that, how did you go about growing the brand and essentially marketing it online to the world?
Well, yeah, again, we're probably on eBay, still on eBay now, but it's not as important to us now, but it's still a useful platform. But the point I'm making was we didn't have a website probably till maybe 12 years ago, 15 years ago, which again we were one of the first. I mean, obviously people had websites, but we were selling from the website. So it was basically, yeah, like eBay, we grew a customer base from eBay. Then it was like, well, we should have our own website because you don't have to pay fees and you can probably market it in a different way and reach more people. So it's like, if you look at the journey of digital marketing, I really consider myself a digital marketeer above most things. I'm trying to get our products in front of as many eyeballs as possible, and the right eyeballs. And so yeah, the growth, we created a website, but then e-commerce, all the, and then social media comes along. You've got to be on social media, and you're always riding the technological wave of all the new developments. So and search engine optimization is a big part of what I do. That wasn't even a word in 2002. We didn't know. It was probably in its infancy then, but so you're always trying to stay ahead of the pack and evolve and keep ahead of competitors and just reach people, but in a much more crowded landscape now. Very crowded.
How would you, and naturally by trade, I'm in digital marketing, so I'm really intrigued from your perspective. How would you say digital marketing has changed from, or your role as a digital marketer changed from the mid 2000s to today?
That's another big question. How's it changed? Well, I mean, if you look at it's data. Everything now is data, isn't it? It's like, how many people are visiting my website a day? How many of them are converting to buyers? How many, and then you look at all the social media data and how many referrals and likes, shares, and is that work? You can track every user. Where do they come from? I mean, I have a certain level of knowledge of data. I'm not like a data scientist, but it's just the level of how you can drill down is so much more complex and detailed. But frankly, for me, it sometimes gets a bit bewildering. You're like, well, you go into Google Analytics, you can just, the data, how do I read this? What does it mean to me? And how do I use it to improve what we do? But obviously, yeah, you can see what country they came from, how long they spent, what page they left from, where they came from, what keywords they used, what time they used, what their browser was. Was it a mobile? Was it a desktop? And how do you put all this stuff together into, reaching more of the same sort of person? But so that's one aspect of how it's changed, is just the digital, the data, the drill down, and how you use that. We have, and I think, how long ago was it? We email marketing is a very big part of what we do. So we have a big database of customers who want to. We send out a bi-weekly newsletter. That's very important to us, and that's another, on the data on that. Who clicked through, what did they click through on, conversion optimization, and it's just there's just so much more angles and areas of, it's just evolving all the time. And obviously we've got AI coming along. Well, it's here, not coming along, it's already here. And how's that going to affect what we do? So I'd say it's always it's just getting to grips with all the new technologies as they come around, and staying relevant and ahead of the pack, and having a voice that resonates with people and a brand, and having an audience. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, each area has a unique skill set, and SEO is important for us. SEO, search engine optimization. So I'm constantly writing content and now we could use AI to write content. Is that a good idea? I don't know. Maybe we'll get penalized by Google at some point, but it's just, there's a whole, it's constantly expanding and evolving. And it's sometimes, it's a lot to keep on top of, isn't it?
How do you think
Sorry.
you're going to leverage AI more efficiently in the next few years within the business?
Well, I use it really for a lot of content research right now. So I'm not, we don't have an AI assistant on, like a chat assistant, or although that's not rocket science, we could easily there's plenty of apps that provide that. So again, I haven't really understand bits of AI, but I know people run their campaigns on AI. I haven't done that yet. I don't know how that really works, if it's successful. But right now, it's really content, for generating content and content research. That's our main way of using AI. And there's like image AI. Sometimes I want to integrate that on the website. People can drop a photo of something they like into either their house or into a room, and see there's all that angle, which is going to be increasingly important. But that's what I said. It is hard to, you've only got so many hours in a day. What do you do? I mean, for instance, we video all of our products. We have quite a busy YouTube channel. So like I say, back in the day, you would just upload photos and it would sell. But now you've got to be a videographer, an editor, a content generator, a personality, a voice. Like, there's a lot there. A data scientist, that would be useful to wear that hat as a data scientist. It's just, like I said, there's a lot of pockets of stuff you have to get your head around.
So, away from the business, you mentioned something pretty cool to me before, and I essentially dubbed you a pioneer of being a digital nomad, because you said that mid 2000s you're in Barcelona running the business, and you said, I guess unbeknown to me at the time, I was technically a digital nomad. Could you just talk more about that experience?
The actual bit of being a digital nomad, or being in Barcelona, or all of it? Anything particular you want to hear?
I guess more thoroughly being a digital nomad, how it was then compared to now, because I know a lot of our listeners are nomads, and equally, yeah, the experience of Barcelona 20 years ago.
Yes, like as you said, I was recounting what I did, and it did dawn on me. I'm like, wow, actually, I realised that I had a portable business. Hence, I didn't need to be in a certain location at that time, London. I love London, but I was like, I want to experience another culture, another language. I want to learn another language, which I did. I learned Spanish, and I like the weather, and just I'm a traveller. Yeah, so I was like, well, let's move to Barcelona, which I did. I drove, actually got the ferry from Portsmouth to Bilbao, then drove. I had a car at the time, and actually didn't need it. I realised in Barcelona, but it was interesting because, as I explained to you again, it was pre-Wi-Fi, so there was a couple of internet cafes. Well, there were internet cafes, but people would go to internet cafes just to log on to a computer to quickly check their Hotmail. At the time, everyone used Hotmail, and to do whatever else, maybe book a flight. Could you even book flights then? I can't remember, early noughties.
Teletext?
It wasn't quite teletext, but no, EasyJet was around. That was stuff like that. But the point I'm making was there were internet cafes where there were also other people doing similar things. So it was very pioneer. Like, people had a business and they, like me, thought, hang on a minute, I don't need to be in London. Let's move somewhere hot. But yeah, like I said, there was no Wi-Fi. You would have to. I had a laptop, yeah, but you would have to plug in a cable to get your data because Wi-Fi was not around, and the internet was a lot slower. But we didn't. This is pre-YouTube. This is pre-social media, really. So I mean, there was social media, but it was things like Friends Reunited, which was I don't know if you heard of that. It was like a precursor to Facebook that everyone used at the time, but very different. Yeah, like there wouldn't be video, there wouldn't be, the images would download, but like very slowly off when you'd see the photo appear. So yeah, it was a different time, but a fun time. Yeah.
And then that, essentially, you mentioned that you met your wife while you're in Barcelona, and now you're in Huntington Beach. California, how would you say the US compares to the UK? And I know you said you frequently fly back to the UK, not just to leisure around, but to actually do business.
Yeah. So the question is, how does the UK compare to the US?
Yeah, from what you've seen, your perspectives.
I mean, where do I start? I mean, they're so different. I mean, I love both places, and for their own reasons. I mean, I love the weather here and the lifestyle, and California. You know, I do yoga. I like to surf, so it's very California vibes, and I like all that, and it's very relaxed. I mean, I probably couldn't live in the middle of America, or you know, although America's a beautiful country, it's I particularly like the natural stuff and the outdoor stuff. But then I go back to England, and the business I'm from, kind of grew up in Hertfordshire, stroke North London, and so I can drive to St Albans and I can see a lovely cathedral and Roman ruins, and you know, you don't get that history in America, so I love it. Yeah, like I said, they're different entities, but in terms of, I mean, the other good reason to be in America, particularly California, it's very tech. You know, it's like really the epicenter of the tech world. Not really here, but more, you know, San Francisco. But LA has a lot of big brands and YouTube's in LA and other um, entities like that. So it's interesting. Yeah, you're in the tech hub, you know.
Do
But
you
also,
think? Sorry.
for the last piece, it's great being in America because for our business, America is our second biggest market. A lot of our customers are in America. So I'm on the same time zone as most of them, or at least on a better time zone than according from the UK. So I can speak to someone in Texas, you know, Massachusetts, and then they hear my accent, and then I have a story which brings a human element. You know, it's a website, we sell things, but they can talk to a guy who is from England and is married to an American lady and has two American sons. That's a you know, it's like a connection. And that's, for me, a lot of business is connection, isn't it? It's about you getting under the skin of whoever you're talking to and making a connection. So yeah, that's on that front, it's been very useful. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, which I guess you've somewhat answered there. I was going to say, what competitive advantages do you think you have from having a business in the UK, but being positioned in LA, well,
Yeah,
California?
that's obviously that's what I touched on. Yeah, we have a presence in America, so we have our website. We have an American number.
Hmm.
So if a client, a potential client, comes along and looks browsing our stuff, oh, they have a US number. So that's you know, definitely is an advantage being here for that reason. But I mean, UK is still our biggest market. Europe used to be our second biggest market. Then Brexit happened. Don't get me started on that one. I mean, that was a complete disaster. Like, the biggest trading block in the world. Let's have seamless trading with it, but no, that's not allowed anymore. So, but no, Germany was a huge market. Germany, they love English antiques, and then France, Italy, Spain, Portugal. But yeah, it was Germany and France, which are the two biggest countries in Europe that were our big market then. And now we hardly hear from our European customers because they don't want to pay import tariffs. So
Is there anything that you're working on within the business to work around those import taxes?
yeah, I mean, well, we obviously have to cut deal. You know, we have to sort of try and offer a better deal so that absorbs any extra costs they
Hmm.
have, or find a way to. Some shippers can seem to circumnavigate it. I don't know how they do, but so yeah. But generally, we just don't get as many inquiries now because I think, you know, from the off, leaving Europe, people are either our European customers or ex-customers are either they think, well, I'm not going to buy because I'll get extra duties and it'll be more expensive, or I don't want to, you know, I think it was like slighted slightly. It's like, oh, well, they don't want to be in Europe. Let's not do business with them. It was a terrible move. But, you know, I don't want to get political, but I'm just stating facts. As a business, we used to sell lots of items to Europe. It was a great market, and now it's pretty much zero. So I know there's lots of other businesses like that who also had the same negative experience. And so, yeah, that was annoying to say the least.
I mean, I think what you've said there is the voice that a lot of my generation echoes. Maybe not so much from a business standpoint, but I guess freedom of movement has been
Well,
awful.
that's exactly it. I moved to Spain because I had a British passport that allowed, at the time we were part of the EU, I could live in Spain, and that gave me that freedom to travel and
Hmm.
to cultural exchange. Yeah, I feel sorry for younger guys, the younger generations who don't have that freedom, and I think it's a travesty it was taken from you. Yes.
I guess it's a situation, and there's parts of the world that have it far worse than us not being able to live in Spain if we want to,
No,
or
I know. It's not a grand scheme of problems in the world, but I'm just saying it's a shame that it's not around anymore.
Mm,
Yeah, but you can
yeah, of
still go to
course,
Spain. You can still live there, move there, I guess, but it's not as easy.
yeah, 3 months, Shenzhen, whatnot. So that
Yeah.
I'm curious. So it sounds like you've lived a pretty well-traveled life. If you could go back in time and give 20-year-old Martin a word of advice, or a younger person listening to this podcast right now, what would you give him?
$1 million question. I sometimes look back, not with regret, but like I probably would have studied to become a doctor or like a real profession where, I mean, I have quite a few friends in the medical world and I'm quite fascinated by that. So that my advice, I mean, I'm not saying go back, be a doctor or a lawyer, because even now, like those industries, I'm not saying they're under threat from AI, but you don't know. I mean, everything seems a bit up in the air, but obviously I don't think being a good doctor is going to be taken over by an AI bot. I'm not saying that, but sometimes being in business like we are now, it's a kind of a constant hustle. You're always having to, which is great, and it says a lot about your character that you can still, you can navigate the world and survive in it and do well. But I also look at the advantage of having a profession where you're very, very well paid, and it's like a longevity to it. So I would another advice I would give is I was quite restless, I guess, because I did corporate jobs. I worked for BT in their internet department as an editor, and I was also a music editor for a website. I worked at News International as an editor. I hopped around jobs a lot. I didn't. Whereas if you stay in one thing, I was kind of impatient, is what I'm saying. I was like, oh, I'm not earning enough money. I need to progress more, and let's move over there. But then you look back and you see the people who stayed at the place and really progressed and put their time in. But I guess I was kind of restless. I was like, now you'd say ADHD, but I kind of would jump around. Although I did great stuff, I'm just in retrospect looking back and thinking stick with something that it might not be amazing at the time, but it will go somewhere probably. Be a bit more the long game. See, I mean, I can even going back further. One of my first jobs after college was I was a runner at a production company in Soho, a music video production. This was back in the day when musicians did videos and it was a big industry and also commercials on TV. Again, in that job, I was like, I don't really want to run around and get the director's vegetables and fruit vegetables and wash them and put. I felt like I did it, and I'm not like you got to put the time in, but moved from that job. And then people who did the same thing are now like directors, or you stay in that industry. But I sort of jumped around, but I found my groove, and so that's my advice. If you're stick with things and try and look at the long game. Even if it's not amazing at the time.
So at the time, why do you think you were quote unquote restless? You just jumped from place to place.
Well, I'm kind of exaggerating. I didn't jump from. I was a runner for like 8 months, and then the other jobs I was probably 2 or 3 years in them, and then sort of moved on to something else. So why was I? Because I guess it was. I mean, I always knew I was going to. I always had an ambition to not live in England forever. I wanted to experience another culture. I wanted to be in. And it was Spain at the time. Um, I wanted to learn the language, and so that was. I guess it's just a curiosity. Restless is one word, or curiosity is another word, where you're like, what else is out there? And I'm mentioning no names. I still have lots of friends who live in London, but I just wouldn't want to do the same thing. Like commute on a
Hmm.
tube,
Hmm.
cycle to work every day via the same route, and do the same things in London. I love London to bits, and I miss it incredibly, and I identify as a Londoner probably as my main identity metric, but I didn't want to live there forever. Although I might end up back there.
See, I'll take the counter view to what you said, because I think if we're talking to someone who's 20, I would take the belief of try as much as you can between 20 to 30. That is, in my opinion, your decade for experimenting, for learning, for just being curious. I voice it as being curious as opposed to restless, quote unquote. But the reason why I say that is I think all too often people get pigeonholed into a lifestyle. And I can't talk from experience because I am not 50 years old, but I love, and it's partly why I do this podcast, is I love going down to the pub, speaking to older gentlemen who turn around and you can see that they've worn or they're wearing all of these years of doing the same crap over and over again. And I can tell, and a lot of the advice that I've got from older people is to be curious, to try various different things, because that's how you find really what you love. And I would say I've spent a big part of my 20s just being curious and testing things. And I think a big problem that I hear from people my own age who hate their job is they feel as though whatever they're doing is fatal. But in reality, there's a lot of things that you could retrain to do further on in life. And it's not a case of a door being closed and that's it. Most decisions we make in life are ones that we can just walk back down, might take 6 months or a year, and then go back through another door through.
No, it's a very good point. No, you're exactly right in terms of. Well, I'd say you can experiment for your whole life, but particularly up to 30, you have more of a carte blanche because you're probably you have less responsibilities. You probably don't have children. You probably don't have a mortgage, or your financial commitments aren't as good. So it's definitely a good time for that. And so, yeah, I mean, you're kind of countering what I said. I was saying, I was too restless and jumped around, but you're saying it's a good point where it's also part of my journey, and it was useful because it got me to here. So yes, that's it's like how you look. It's perspectives, isn't it? It's how you look at things.
Absolutely.
You can look at it one way, glass. It's just perspectives. But no, I think people did stay in a certain career. I know people who stayed in jobs that I was at the same time doing the same thing, and then they became, the head of the department or the. That's just if you want a pure corporate sort of career ladder, the traditional way, which I guess I never was that person. So that's why I moved around,
Yeah, and I think equally there's no right or wrong. People, I know some people who all they're motivated by is money because they've experienced childhood trauma, which means they fixate over money as the encompassment of security. Therefore, everything they do, they will sacrifice their happiness and leisure to work extremely hard to make money for a period of 10, 15 years and then ride off into the sunset. Whereas for other people, that they might have experienced a bereavement of a parent when they were young and they thought, you know what, life's too short. I want to go and turn around and enjoy life as much as I can. And equally, and one thing I've always said to myself is you can never split test life. You can never say, but what if I did this? You just have to go with that option because you can't turn back the clock and say, what if I did this? You just move with your decisions. And we always hope if you walk out onto the road tomorrow, you hope with the best will and belief in the world that you will not get hit by a car. Until that happens, that's when everything has kind of been shifted against your beliefs. But that's my philosophical route being intertwined. And I think I get a lot of questions from younger people, and they're in a paradox of thinking we have to do this, but in reality, you don't.
Yeah, no. Again, you're sort of giving me good advice. Split testing, I like that analogy. That's a good one. But maybe you could do A/B testing, where you try a few things out and see which one is the best way for you. But no, I mean, it's everyone's different, aren't they? Everyone has a different path, and you're right. People prioritize financial stuff and financial reward from a job or career over other people are more creative or want, it's not as important to make money. But I think it's different, I think it's difficult for younger people now in terms of cost of living. So there's less, everything's so expensive, so you don't have as much freedom and choice. I think it's quite difficult. Yeah, I'd imagine. I mean, yeah.
I think I saw a report on Bloomberg yesterday, and it had a comparison of the percentage of people's earning and income compared to their expenditure on rent or a mortgage. And I believe it had Gen Z or people aged between 18 to 24. And it worked out that on average, 47% of their salary went onto rent. And then it broke it down based on each age segment. And on average, I think between 25 to 34, it was about 34%. And then it greatly reduced. But I know if you caveat that to even 5 years ago, and kind of why I asked you, how do you feel about coming back to London? You said you spend 2-3 months here, so you get a feel for, and you mentioned the costs of living, but the price of rent and just basic commodities and amenities to live, and I'm sure this is still the case in America as well, but in London specifically, it has astronomically increased, whereby people's decisions are pigeonholed now. So I feel it strains a lot of people to getting a basic job because the opportunity to risk is that there bears more weight onto it as it did maybe 10 years ago. However, the caveat is with the internet, with the opportunity to literally start a business from your phone, and it could be a case of selling an info product that doesn't actually cost you the upfront capital that you might need to start an antiques business, because you can't start an antiques business with £100.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunities there for people.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're exactly right. But yeah, the cost of living makes it gives you less freedom to move around, and you might be restricted to being in the job you don't like because you have to pay the bills. So yeah. But just one little point, I'd say California is probably more expensive than London. Yeah.
I'm not shocked by that, but I guess you get the weather there, so that's a big
Exactly. Yeah.
bonus.
Although fuel is less expensive, but that's although I have an e-car, so it doesn't really affect me. I have an electric car.
There we go, up and down the coast very efficiently.
Yeah.
Are you a reader, Martin?
I am a reader. My degree from Sussex University was in English literature. I always wanted to be a writer, so which I kind of was, and I kind of do write for what I do now. I do write a lot of content and all the copywriting, and so I do utilize those skills. But yes, to go back to your question, I used to read. I don't read as much now. I want to read more, but I seem to not find the time. I also think like the world's changed. I think my concentrate, because it's the world of instant gratification. So the phone takes over more now, doesn't it? So you sort of downtime, you might look at your phone, whereas before you'd be reading a book. And reading a long book takes a lot of time and dedication. And I do find I'm kind of impatient. If a book isn't doing well for me after a few chapters, you sort of, because of you're ingrained in this instant gratification culture where you want things quickly and now, and a book isn't like that. But yes, I do read, and I need to read more.
So, and I love reading, so this is one of my favorite questions I've asked people. What are your top 3 non-fiction book recommendations?
Non-fiction. I mean, I was a music journalist, so I like a lot of music books. I like Rip It Up and Start Again by, God, what's his name, the author? Simon. He's a music journalist. That's a really good, it's about the post-punk era. Are you looking for more like business books? I don't really read many business books,
Just your top 3 book recommendations. What books would you recommend for someone listening to read before they die?
Yeah, I'd say the collected works of Shakespeare, definitely. Although that's quite hard reading. I don't know how popular. I mean, Shakespeare's so popular, but it's definitely even as a graduate of English, and I studied a lot of Shakespeare. I still can go to a Shakespeare play and go, actually, what's going on? But no, I'm obviously joking. I mean, the big stories are pretty obviously easy to get around.
Yeah.
I like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That's a very good book, which is basically
What's it about exactly?
kind of, as the title suggests, seize the moment, carpe diem. So in a way, you don't need to read the book. All you need to do is adhere to the title, seize the moment, the power of now. But sometimes those books, you sort of, I'm being flippant here, but you kind of get it from the title. Do I need to read a whole book where every chapter tells me to seize the moment? I could get the idea. But no, he explains.
They just use anecdotes and analogies.
Yeah, exactly. He explains it in a more detailed and interesting fashion, so it's definitely worth reading. But I was being flippant and making a joke. But that's a good one I read. But I don't a massive self-help. Some of those books I've tried to read, some of the famous ones, and I don't really chime with me.
Have you read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
No.
I would say, in my opinion, that is the most emotional, profound book that I've ever read. And so, did you know the story of Viktor Frankl?
No.
So, Viktor Frankl was a psychotherapist, and he was in Auschwitz. And I believe everyone in his family died, bar his sister. And on average, 1 in 28 people would survive Auschwitz. But what he found is that when he went to Auschwitz, he wanted to see himself as, most people would go there and most people would die because they saw this as fatal, that they saw it as that's it, we're here, this is horrific. And it was horrific by any accord. But he saw himself being in Auschwitz as a sort of purpose. So he lent there, when he was there, he lent into being essentially people's pseudo-therapist, so to speak. And he would see that most people would die between the periods of Boxing Day and New Year's Eve, because every year that they were there, they had this hope that the quote was, we'd be out by Christmas. And once Christmas hit and they weren't out, you just saw people's morale just dwindle. And he said that they'd essentially be locked in rooms with others, and he could just be there with someone else who was there, and they could just cherry pick. They'd be like, he's going to die in the next few days. And what have you been to Auschwitz by any chance?
I haven't. No. I've been to Germany, but not no. Not,
Auschwitz is in Poland. It's
sorry,
just
yeah,
outside Krakow.
Yeah,
and
I haven't been to Auschwitz. I mean, I'd like to go, but I haven't been. No.
Harrowing experience. And I read the book just before I went. Quite, I mean, intentionally. I was going there. I had a trip booked in about a month's time. So I thought, you know what? I heard about Man's Search for Meaning, but hands down, it puts so much of life into perspective for you.
I know. I've made a note of that book. I'll read it. Yeah. I like
Give me your feedback once you've read it.
You get good recommendations. That's the way to go. Yeah.
There we go. Martin, I've got a question for you, and this is taken from the internet, and this is attuned to your experience, what you've done with Canonbury Antiques. So the question reads from a fellow entrepreneur, said, how would you go about pivoting from a brick-and-mortar business to a successful online business?
Again, that's a very big question. And how long have you got? But how would you pivot? How much money have you got? How much have you got to invest in, building? I would say grow incrementally. So yeah, like you would have to, you start, as you said, you can start with just a phone now. You got a phone, you can start. And people sell just off Instagram. You don't need to. So, you talking about any particular sector or any business going from bricks and mortar?
It's a super vague business. So, vague question. Yeah. But let's assume someone we'll set up our own parameters here. Let's just say someone has a brick and mortar business. They're doing £25,000-30,000 a month. It's productized, so it's something that they can then obviously pivot online. And they've got probably whatever they pay rent-wise as a budget for advertising. So let's say the rent is £3,000 a month.
Mm. Yeah, no, like small steps. So yeah, you just grow organically in terms of use your phone, set up an Instagram account, start selling from that maybe, or building an audience and a brand from that. And then it's kind of, we did it, everything, little incremental steps. So yeah, we had the email platform, then you have a website, then you have the social media, well, back in the day before Instagram, it was Facebook, but now you've got to be on TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest. I mean, how many hours are there in a day? So depends what the business is. If it's e-commerce, I mean, there's lots of platforms. I think they're also, because we're sort of omni-channel selling. So our website's our biggest property and drives the most sales, but we're also on First Dibs. Are you aware of First Dibs, which is a very high end?
No.
That's a very it's basically a very high end eBay. First Dibs, Etsy, Vinteria, Pomono. These are all specific channel platforms for antiques and interiors and furniture. So I would just say, yeah, like keep growing on one platform, then another one, then have your website, and just incremental steps, and each always moving towards the goal of more revenue and expanding.
So what I hear you're saying is essentially look for the places where you can leverage sources of data and traffic. So your eBays, other places, build that up while you're building your website, and then look at slow, sustainable growth as time goes on.
Exactly, because those people who find you on the other platforms can become repeat customers to your main brand. So obviously, it is a big question because like how much money have you got to invest? Could you just but if it's not about having a big pocket of money to invest, and it's all about growing organically, but having a visual presence, a strong brand and a visual identity, so that people get to know you, and get to realize and understand what you do, and just keep a database of customers. That's important, and particularly email addresses. So every transaction you keep and obviously through an opt-in process, so you're doing it all above board. Because email marketing is very important to us. That's a really important tool to talking to your customers and establishing a relationship and generating trust, and then sales, because we send a bi-weekly email to our database and highlighting products, and we sell a lot of stuff from that. That's important. But no, I mean, you said you're in digital marketing, and one thing I find quite tricky with what we do is we sell very high value stuff. So you can sell like a £5,000, £10,000 bookcase, which the process is very different to a £10 CD or something small. So we have to sort of figure that into our strategy, because people are not going to just instantly drop a 10 grand bookcase into their shopping cart. They might want to talk to you on the phone. They might want to view it in person. They definitely have to trust you. And obviously that goes down to social proof. That's important, social proof. So, people, when they buy things, research you, won't they? They're like, oh, Canonbury Antiques, what do? Let's Google them. Oh, look, they've got reviews on Google. That means they're bona fide and they're legit. Oh, look, they're really lots of followers on Instagram. It's a portfolio, isn't it, of stuff around you that makes them go, I trust these guys. Here's my money. I want to buy the bookcase. So, the concept of social proof, don't you, where people look around. And so, yeah, that's all very important to making the leap from bricks and mortar because you're now in the digital space. You're in the digital world. People need to see you're legit. And yes, but that takes a long time to build up that trust, and all the platforms, it's and we're kind of a small business. I mean, I say small, we have a team, there's 10 people, but, a big brand would have a head of email marketing. They'd have a social media. They might even have one guy on TikTok, one guy on Instagram, one guy on Meta, a search engine guy, a customization guy, and obviously then there's AdWords and click as part of your strategy, which we all do. But again, that's very hard for what we do, because I've never really had much. By the way, if there's any listeners who have a advertising agency, pay-per-click, I'd be interested to hear if they feel they could help me with high-end, luxury, high-value conversions. Because a few campaigns on Google advertising, and it's quite hard we haven't had much traction from that. Most of our sales are from organic SEO and stuff like that, As I said, it's the decision process of buying an expensive thing is very different. An antique, a piece of art, it's high-end luxury goods,
Would you say the hardest part of not running an online business, but the hardest part of driving growth in an online business is the first acquisition? If you can get that across the line, then the rest becomes far, far easier.
The first acquisition of a customer, or
customer, exactly.
Well, obviously, it's all about having customers. So yeah, that's definitely the hurdle, or but it's you have to sell a lot of stuff to make a decent revenue. You have to it's a high volume. You have to really. There's always a constant pressure to have keep churning and keep. It's kind of a hustle, really, which sometimes can be quite draining and tiring. But it's also you're your own boss and you're self-employed and you have your own business. So but no, it's definitely. I think the mindset of an entrepreneur and someone who's in business, and I think I come from like a family of entrepreneurs, and I'm just saying the minds that you almost have to have the resilience, not of a cockroach, but a very resilience of, well, you have to wake up every day or in the week and go, well, no one's paying me. There's not a paycheck coming at the end of the month. This is all down to me. If I don't perform this month, it isn't going to work. So that's quite it's quite a pressure at some point. Well, it is a pressure, obviously, and I think everyone has that. I have friends in the corporate world, and they could talk to me, and they envious of my life in some regards, because I'm a bit more free in some regards, which is great. But then I look at them and I'm like, oh, it'd be great to. At the end of the day, you have a paycheck. No one's. Obviously you have to perform and do well, but I think it's less of an edge of pressure. Do you know what I mean?
I have exactly the same case, and up with a few friends a couple of weeks ago. We went to play paddle randomly at Battersea Power Station. You probably know it. And we finished, I think, 8 till 9. Or sorry, yeah. Anyways, we finished our session, and one of the friends said, "Oh, got to shoot." He's like, "Oh, mate, you're so lucky. You just work on your own terms. You can do what you want." And I was like, "Yeah, true, but equally, when an invoice doesn't come through at the end of the month that you expected it to come through, or you have a VAT bill that you stupidly forgot about, then you've got all of these expectations and pressures. And yeah, you have some great months at times, and equally you have some months where you think,
Yeah, no,
this is looking really, really, and you actually make a loss. So it's I mean, it is always the case of the grass is greener, but if you don't hunt that month, you're not making money. If your website went down tomorrow, then that's it.
Yeah, no, it's a pressure and a stress, but like I say, it gives you. I think it gives you, having done it for a while, and anyone starting out, you give resilience and a strength and it's kind of noble. It's kind of, I was thinking about that more recently, where I'm like, actually, I kind of look at corporate people, and in some regards, they're probably making a lot more money. I don't know, maybe they're not. Who knows? But I did corporate world, and I don't think I'm really a corporate person. I'm a thing where you're like, why am I in this meeting? What is everyone talking about? Do we need, everything's meetings, and it seems, and everything's committee based. So if you want to get anything done, you have to go through like so many people. But just to go back to the point, yeah, there's a resilience and a strength of character in being a business person, and you've really got to have tough stuff out and just ride stuff, and and kind of live with a bit of stress here and there, and know that hopefully tomorrow will be a better day if you had a bad day today. It's just keep going, one foot in front of the other.
A bit of a random tangent, and I've spoken about this before, but I've looked at chosen suffering versus unchosen suffering. So chosen suffering is sport and trying hard stuff. And you mentioned that you surf. Do you think you going out onto the waves and surfing makes you indirectly better at business because you put yourself in an uncomfortable position?
No, I mean, I think really for me, doing exercise and stuff like that and yoga is mental health, is and physical, keeping fit and healthy. But no, I mean, there's all analogies, I'd say, between surfing and business, because you're sort of you're bobbing around in the ocean, waiting hopefully for a really good wave.
Yep, nice.
And if it comes along and you have a really good ride, then you're happy. It's in the business world, you're bobbing around hoping for a good customer, and if they come along, and hopefully you have a really good day and you have 10 waves or 10 customers. So there are analogies, of course, pretty basic analogies, but I wouldn't say surfing. I mean, it's just a healthy, fun pursuit that keeps me grounded and does help me in my day-to-day life. Although I'm surfing less than I used to, only because I'm really busy, and I think prioritize yoga more than surfing. So, but no, surfing is a great. I'm in Surf City. Huntington Beach is Surf City, and it's what people do here. A lot of my not a lot, but social life would be, do you want to go for a surf? Then maybe, do you want to go for a pint afterwards? Yeah.
Nice. Martin, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you?
Okay, the Canonbury Antiques, if you type Canonbury Antiques, that's with one N, CANONBURY Antiques, that brings up our website, all of our social media platforms. You can follow us on Instagram, Canonbury Antiques also. So, and even though it's called Antiques, I'm kind of almost thinking of rebranding just the Canonbury, because sometimes I think Antiques I love antiques and old stuff, and it's coming back round in terms of, it's green, it's good for the environment, it's a circular economy. And I think people really value buying things that are old and have a connection to history and have a story and, like a value on that level. So I'm sort of meandering a bit here. You asked me Canonbury Antiques online. My personal, I actually do a music photography here, which I was a music journalist. So you can follow me personally on Martin Worcester Photography. That's on Instagram. I have a website, and I really enjoy it. That's like a creative outlet for me, because I'm to be quite a creative person. So yeah, and a music fanatic. So that ties up things, but that's like a fun sideline. That's not the main business is Canonbury Antiques. Yeah.
Amazing. Martin, thank you so much for your time.
Joe, it was a pleasure, and I think what you're doing great, and I'll listen to the rest of your podcast. It's fascinating stuff, and you're very engaged and insightful and ask good questions. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I appreciate those words. Thank you.
Okay.